We're midway through the 2025 F1 season, coming off what was a crazy barrage of driver transfer moves over the course of last season, and we start to question to ourselves, will we start to see some of those moves happen this year? We've already seen some crazy stuff happen over the season, with Liam Lawson getting demoted after 2 races from Red Bull, Jack Doohan getting replaced after only 6 races by Franco Colapinto, and more could happen. Who knows? We will see. But what I want to do today is break down my 2026 F1 driver predictions, give it more a few races in, see what's going to happen. I just get some predictions out there and maybe get them right and most likely get them wrong. Hello and welcome into the backfield. I'm your host, Connor Schaff, and today I will be giving you my predictions for the 2026 F1 driver grid, including my predictions for the Cadillac F1 team that will be joining F1 this upcoming season. There are a lot of teams that already have drivers nailed down for next season, but we don't really know what is going to happen outside of that. In addition to that, there are many things that could completely shake up the driver market that we don't know just the answer to quite yet. I think the big one, the glaring thing that's happening in this driver market right now is Max Verstappen. Will Max Verstappen stay at Red Bull or will he go to Mercedes or Aston Martin? We don't really know. I think that's really what's holding up any teams from making any moves. As you look at it at face value, you are quite shocked to know that someone like George Russell hasn't signed a contract for next year yet. In addition to that, we have many teams that don't have any drivers nailed down for the 2026 season, including Mercedes, as mentioned before, and Racing Bulls. So I want to start with 10th place on the grid and move our way up, going through who I think will be on the 2026 grid next year, as shown by this nice little chart I have that'll come up on screen throughout the video. We're going to start with Sauber, as mentioned before, who will be becoming Audi for the 2026 season. And in their first seat, I think they are going to have Nico Hülkenberg. And in their second seat, I think they will have Gabriel Bortoleto. So I don't think they're going to have any changes going into next year and will keep the same roster. With Nico Hülkenberg, I think you just need someone who is a bona fide leader of the team. I don't think you want to have 2 drivers that are too young for a team that really just needs to focus on developing at the moment. You look at Nico Hülkenberg, and he's underperformed in some situations, but also significantly outperformed the car in some situations as well. You look at last week in Miami, where he managed to consistently outperform that car and could have even gotten into the points if he was just a little more lucky. In addition to that, he had the incredible race in Australia where he managed to get a P7 and outscore Sauber's entire 2024 points performance in one race. In addition, I think Gabriel Bortoleto has done quite well for himself as well. While he hasn't scored any points and is currently sitting last in the championship, obviously besides Franco Colapinto, who hasn't completed a race yet, he has been quite good. He's been a little crash happy. He's had a couple crashes here and there, including he crashed in Imola practice over the last couple days. But I think he's had some unlucky situations with the engine failure he had in Miami. But overall, I think he's been quite good, and I think he has a ton of potential, being one of only 4 drivers to ever win F3 and F2 back-to-back. We're now going to move on to Alpine, who are currently sitting P9 in the championship. They obviously have been in the headlines recently. First, for Ollie Oaks leaving the team. There are some crazy theories going around with that. I'm not going to get into that today. But I do think that that's going to play into what they do next season. They did also replace Jack Doohan with Franco Colapinto. And we're in a bit of an interesting situation there because Alpine's social media team said that it's only a 5-race contract, but then Flavio Briatore comes out and says that he doesn't know what they're talking about. My guess is he's technically on a 5-race contract, but Flavio Briatore has no interest in swapping it up. I'm recording this right after Franco Colapinto crashed in qualifying, really holding up to his standard of being the most crash-happy driver in F1. But I do think that he has just so much speed in him. He still managed to get out of Q1, which Jack Doohan wasn't able to do many times in that car. And I think that he's got a lot of hope for the future. And that is why I'm going to say that Pierre Gasly remains in the first seat, which is a surprise to no one. He's under contract, and there's no reason for them to change it up. And I think that Franco Colapinto is going to remain in his seat for next year. I think that there might be some speculation among people with having guys like Paul Aron and many other, I want to say they have Kushmaini on their reserve roster, many other drivers on their reserve line. They still have Jack Doohan as well, but I think that Franco Colapinto is someone that Flavio Briatore really likes, and I think that that's going to propel him into keeping a race seat for next year. In addition, he does kind of bring in that money, which is quite important nowadays in Formula One. We now are going to move on to Racing Bulls, where I'm going to have quite the switch up for them. I am going to have, this is kind of what I'm debating. I'm going to give you 3 driver names and then in my head get it down to 2. The first one I think is Liam Lawson, who I think might keep a race seat even if he has a really poor season, just because Red Bull feels bad for how much they screwed him over. I think that you can chalk up a lot of his performance right now to nerves because of how horrible of a situation he's in right now. He was demoted after only 2 races, not by Helmut Marko, not by Christian Horner, but by the higher-ups at Red Bull, who made the decision for the team pretty much, and he looks like he has no confidence in the car at the moment. He just keeps getting penalty after penalty and crash after crash. He got super unlucky in Imola qualifying today with Colapinto's crash, and you just have to think that Red Bull might just feel bad enough for him to give him a race seat next year. With that being said, there are 2 other names who are currently Formula 2 drivers who I think might contend to take that seat away. The first one is Arvid Lindblad, who might be the most touted prospect in all of junior Formula drives right now. He is now the youngest driver to ever win a Formula 2 race and is currently sitting at P7 in the Formula 2 championship. He pulled out a very respectable P2 in the sprint race today. My boy Jack Crawford won the race. I tried to get him in the video today, but I don't think quite yet. I don't think quite yet. We'll talk about him a little bit more later, though. I think that Arvid Lindblad is just such an exceptional driver, though, and I think that he actually is almost guaranteed a seat for next year. I really don't see how he doesn't get put in that Racing Bull seat, especially given he's got his super license now and he is performing up to what you would expect out of him in Formula 2. But there's one other guy who's been performing really, really well in Formula 2, and that is Pepe Marti. He's currently sitting P2 in the Formula 2 championship and has probably been the best driver overall in Formula 2 so far. He's not currently leading the championship. That's Richard Verschoor. Richard Verschoor is kind of leading the championship because he got very lucky with strategy on one of the races. Not saying that it wasn't still a great effort from him, but he is kind of lucked into the position he's gotten into. I think Pepe Marti has been a much more impressive driver so far this year. And I think that if he wins the Formula 2 championship, which kind of right now I'm feeling that's going to happen, I kind of feel like he's going to be someone that's extremely touted to get that Racing Bulls seat next year. With that being said, I do think I'm going to go with Liam Lawson in that first seat and Arvid Lindblad in that second seat for Racing Bulls next year. And I think that Pepe Marti is going to be that next guy up and could even replace Liam Lawson mid-season if he's struggling. We are now going to move on to Aston Martin, who I think are going to keep the exact same driver lineup as well, with Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. I think that there's a bit of an interesting situation going on here. I don't see any situation Fernando Alonso leaves. I think he's going to give it this year under the reins of Adrian Newey's car development to hopefully build a title contender car that Fernando Alonso can hopefully compete in. For that second seat, I think it's a little more interesting, though, because we keep hearing rumors that maybe Lance Stroll could be on his way out. Now, we thought for the longest time this guy would never be leaving Aston Martin. And what's funny is right as we're seeing rumors that he could be out of F1, going to compete in something like WEC or Formula E, that he has actually been performing pretty well this year. He put his car P8 in Imola qualifying today. He's outscored his teammate 14-0 for whatever that's worth. He's kind of lucked into all 14 of those points, but it's still something. He's definitely overperformed expectations this year for a driver that's kind of the meme of the grid. And I think that that's going to do him some good in retaining his seat for next year. And obviously, he has dad tax in this situation, so that's got to be taken quite heavily into consideration. Next up, we have Haas, though, who I also think are going to retain their driver lineup for next year, with Esteban Ocon and Oliver Biermann. And I think we've seen a lot of strong glimpses out of this driver pairing so far. Unfortunately, Haas has a major issue, it seems, on some tracks. They looked absolutely horrible in Australia. They looked absolutely horrible in Imola. There's been a couple more tracks that they've just looked awful in. But then you look at something like China. They were very good in China. You look at something like Bahrain. Maybe it wasn't Bahrain. Maybe it was Saudi. I want to say they were quite good in Saudi as well. So it seems very, very track dependent on what they are good in. It seems like they really struggle with these high-speed corner tracks. And we'll have to see if they can get out of that hole, but I see no reason to think that they're going to switch up this driver lineup. Oliver Biermann seems touted for Ferrari once Lewis Hamilton chooses to retire. And Esteban Ocon is one of, if not the best, midfield drivers on the grid. So it's just a great driver pairing to have that pairs experience with youth and talent. And I think that that's something that Haas appreciates, and I don't think that they're going to change it up. Next up, we have Williams, who I also think that they're going to stick with the driver lineup for next year. I see no reason to change it up when they are probably the biggest overperformance of the season so far. Both drivers are consistently getting into Q3 and are consistently giving incredible performances in the car. More specifically, Alex Albon has definitely been my driver of the 2025 season so far. He has been unbelievable, putting out great result after great result. He put it P5 in Miami, and it's not the first time he's done it. He put it P5 in Australia. He might have put it P4 in the sprint race in Miami before getting pretty unlucky with a penalty. But overall, it's been an unbelievable season so far for Williams, and there's no reason to think that they will change up this lineup. We now are going to move on to the team that has somehow managed to destroy any form they had coming into the 2024 season, having a very impressive Q2 exit in Imola. But I think that at this point, they're just going all in for 2026. I think they've given up on the 2025 season, which is very unfortunate for their driver pairing, who I think has so much potential within them. And we have to think Lewis Hamilton isn't getting any younger. How much more can he get as a driver, and will he be able to have any more longevity? But I think that they are likely still going to stick with their driver pairing of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton for next year. Charles Leclerc is obviously one of the best drivers on the grid, potentially the second best driver on the grid. And Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time world champion. I don't think much more needs to be said. Hopefully in 2026, they can give these drivers a half-decent car so that they can actually compete for the championship. But I really don't know. We now are going to move on to Red Bull, who I think is going to stick with Max Verstappen. Or to put it better, I think Max Verstappen is going to stick with Red Bull. I think that I just don't see a situation where he really leaves. It just doesn't feel right. I think he's going to give it at least one season with the 2026 regulations. And I think that given that likely Red Bull aren't going to be very good and Mercedes and Aston Martin aren't going to be very good, I think there's a very high chance that Max Verstappen leaves after 2026. But I think that it's a little crazy to think that Max Verstappen leaves before the 2026 season when he gets the chance to scout out the field and see who's very good. With that being said, looking at their second seat, I am going to go with one of the informed drivers of the 2025 season, and in my opinion, the best rookie of the 2025 season so far, Isaac Hadjar. I think that Hadjar has been a very impressive driver this year. I think that he has shown so much potential and so much speed in the car. And while he did have a crash in practice in Imola and had the crash in Australia, honestly, I was expecting him to be a lot more crash happy than he's actually been. And I think he's honestly been a lot more disciplined as a whole. I think that you look at how he's handled himself over the course of the season, rebounding from his performance in Australia. I think that that shows a lot of his character. In addition to that, I think that Isaac Hadjar's driving style, out of the Red Bull Junior drivers of him, Liam Lawson, and Yuki Tsunoda, honestly fits the team the best. He probably is the most comparable to Max Verstappen in how he drives the car with the aggressiveness of his moves. And I think that that's going to help him a lot with getting the seat for next year, especially if Yuki Tsunoda continues to underperform, and I just don't see any situation where Liam Lawson gets back in that seat. We now are going to move on to Mercedes, where I have them also sticking with their driver lineup of George Russell and Andrea Kimi Antonelli. This has been a major breakout season for George Russell as a driver, where he still is in the running for the Drivers' Championship. He has been unbelievable, outperforming his car on a consistent basis. In a Mercedes that clearly has tire issues, he has been able to extract everything out of this car and keeps putting himself on the podium. I think that he has really shown that he can be the face of a franchise of any team he goes into. And I think that's really going to help his case at Mercedes. I think the really unfortunate thing for him is he is kind of the pawn in the Max Verstappen drama. I don't think he is going to get a contract until we know what happens with Max Verstappen for next year. And I think likely he's only going to get a one-year contract because Mercedes are going to keep holding out for Max Verstappen. With his second seat, though, I think Andrea Kimi Antonelli is easily going to stick with his seat. I think if he scored 0 points this year, he would likely still keep his seat just because of how much potential he has shown in Junior Formula Series. I think that he has been very, very good so far this year. I think he's overall cooled down a little bit. He had a very impressive sprint pole in Miami, though his race pace has been a little subpar, but he is a rookie, and we have to keep that in mind, and he has been so impressive overall as a rookie. And I'll be honest, I did not think that he would be competing at all this year, and he's been able to keep his name in the hat. Obviously, he's not going to be competing for the Drivers' Championship. There are only 4 drivers doing that, but I think he's got a good chance to get P5 in the championship if he keeps up his form like this. And then we have McLaren, who I also think are going to keep their driver lineup of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And while I think that there's going to be some tension building up between these two drivers over the course of the year, I see no reason that they won't stick it out for at least one more year. I think that it's possible that one of the two drivers jumps ship within the next 2 or 3 years if the other driver starts getting prioritized more. Let's say that Oscar Piastri wins the championship this year, and they continue to prioritize Oscar because of that. I don't think Lando Norris will like that very much. And when teams like Audi and Cadillac and Aston Martin won't have a star driver as of 2027, being able to jump into a team that has a ton of potential like that could be very appealing to one of these drivers. In addition, I think it would happen vice versa as well. If Lando Norris wins the championship this year, I think Oscar Piastri could be very likely to jump ship in the coming years. With that being said, I think that it is very likely that these two drivers stick with it for at least one more year, as they have the clear dominant car this year. And it'll be interesting to see how they can develop the 2026 car in comparison to see if they can still compete going into 2026. And finally, we have the interesting situation of Cadillac, who I think is very clear who one of their drivers will be. Sergio Perez has basically already been confirmed as a Cadillac driver, and to be honest, can you really blame them? What does he not have as a Cadillac driver option? He is a quick driver. I know he sucked in 2024 with Red Bull, but I implore you to go look at 2020, where he had an unbelievable season in the Racing Point car prior to getting with Red Bull, where he finished P4 in the championship and a racing point. That is incredible in my opinion, and I think that we're kind of forgetting how good Sergio Perez can be as a midfield driver. In addition to that, he also has money, which is a very important thing. Those Mexican sponsors are very important for a team just starting out in F1. And they also have a guy that has lots of fans. Cadillac needs to build their base. I think they want to build their base in North America. Obviously, their big goal has been to get an American driver in the seat, but it's starting to be doubtful if that will come. Colton Herta just hasn't been performing this year. I was watching Indy 500 qualifying before recording this. He had a crazy crash. He hasn't been it so far this year, and it's a little disappointing to see as someone who'd really like to see an American driver in that seat. I think another driver to keep in mind is Jack Crawford, who I actually think might be more in the race than people are giving him credit for. He had a bit of a slow start in the F2 season, but he finished P2 in the Saudi Arabian feature race and finished first in the Imola sprint race. We'll see what he does in the feature race as well there. But I think that he has a lot of potential. He's still only 18 or 19 years old. And I think that he has a potential to be, at worst, the reserve driver for this team, with the potential to hop in the seat as soon as next year. But with that being said, there's one driver who's currently on the F1 grid who I haven't mentioned yet. And you might know who it is. It is Yuki Tsunoda. And I think that's going to be who takes the second Cadillac seat for next year. Yuki Tsunoda is someone who brings in sponsors, who brings in speed. And I think given that most likely he's not going to stick with Red Bull for the 2026 season, it's going to be a great opportunity for him to rebound his career alongside another veteran driver. And I think it'll be interesting to see what the driver pairing of Sergio Perez and Yuki Tsunoda does. We've seen them together in the two different Red Bull teams for quite a while. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how they do a head-to-head with each other, given that people have been talking about for years whether Yuki Tsunoda should have replaced Sergio Perez sooner. And I think that'll create quite an interesting dynamic between the team, giving Cadillac two drivers that can compete even if the car isn't all there in year one. But with that being said, to wrap things up, I believe that all 20 drivers on the F1 grid will be remaining on the grid in 2026. Just like from 2023 to 2024, there just isn't any clear situations of drivers that have noticeably underperformed to a point where they have to get dropped. Obviously, the clear one is Liam Lawson, who, as I mentioned, is definitely the most likely to be dropped. But I look at the other 19 drivers. The only other one I really think could be dropped is maybe Gabriel Bortoleto. If he just really underperforms, scores 0 points, the team doesn't feel that he is going to fit the Audi project going forward. And Lance Stroll, I don't think he will get dropped. I think maybe he'll retire from F1 to go race in another series. But I don't think that's very likely, as I have all 20 drivers remaining on the grid, as well as Arvid Lindblad and Sergio Perez rejoining the grid. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, as well as commenting down below your predictions for the 2026 F1 Drivers Grid. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great one. Bye.